Hello, hello. I'm Tyler Clark, founder and co-creative director of Lucid Studios, and this is Real Reflections, where we talk a little bit of movies, TV, and even throw in the occasional book. And today, things are going to get a little bit grimy. We're going crime thriller first and talking Kristen Stewart's new film, Love Lies Bleeding. It's currently in theaters. Then we're going to put on our true crime pants, and we're going to talk a little bit about Under the Bridge, a new miniseries currently streaming on Hulu starring Oscar nominee from last year, Lily Gladstone. So thanks for joining me, and if it's your first time, welcome in. So before we get to that, a couple little reminders. The podcast is now also available on Spotify. I appreciate the love in either place, or wherever it's easier for you. Oh, and we also hit on the YouTube channel over 3,000. Shoot, I think we're coming up on 3,500 subscribers. So as always, I really appreciate the love, and keep it coming. Next stop 10K, baby. And I wanted to drop on you guys' radar. There's a new show coming out on Hulu on the 30th. It looks like that looks pretty good, starring Elizabeth Moss, who people remember from Handmaid's Tale and Mad Men. She's also made some movie appearances as well, but fantastic actress. Always love watching her. And this looks like kind of a different role for her from the trailer. It looks like it's kind of a Jason Bourne type movie, and she's in that playing the secret agent role. And it looks like they spent some money on it. There's some cool locations. The action scenes, at least from the trailer, look really well done. So it looks like it's going to be worth checking out. And they're going to drop 2 episodes on April 30th. So I'm going to be checking that out and then report back. But if any of you guys watch it as well, make sure to drop a note in the comments. And I wanted to throw out my Watchlist winners early this week because I didn't get to them last week. So just going to throw out a couple honorable mentions of shows that I checked out over the week, but just don't have time to really get to in depth here. Or like in this first example, like I thought it was a really well-made show, but it just didn't really hook me like Under the Bridge did. First one is Sugar, and that is an Apple Plus show starring Colin Farrell. It's basically a detective show. Colin Farrell plays a PI who is, I would say, kind of a man out of time. He's really more of a character from like a 40s or 50s PI novel, but set in contemporary LA. And what I mean by that, he drives like the older car. He's or the older classic car. He's obsessed with classic films. So at least the first episode, this is the only one I watched, but it's kind of intercut with scenes from some of those old classic black and white films, and it's very stylish. Colin Farrell's awesome. The only thing that I guess kind of bumped for me was the character itself just felt a little bit too perfect. Maybe that's some people want a perfect main character. He speaks all these languages. He's nice to unhouse people. Like, he's just kind of perfect. Like, I didn't see any flaws in his character in the first episode, but very well shot, very stylistic. His performance is great. It seemed like the supporting roles were casted well. Like I say, it just didn't really grip me. But other people, I think it's for sure worth a look, and should check it out. Number 2 is Fallout. That is the new Amazon show that they dropped. I think they dropped all the episodes maybe a week or so ago. Stars Walton Goggins, Ella Purnell, and Aaron Moten. And it is another video game adaptation, which I played the Fallout game. I mean, I think there's like 3 or 4 of them, honestly, but I was a little bit familiar with it. I wasn't super into it, but I was familiar enough with the game to kind of get the idea. And I think they did a great job adapting it, just from like watching the first couple episodes. Like the world is very it's very visceral. The production design is great. They went heavy on practical effects over CGI. So if you don't know much about Fallout, it's real quickly, it's a post-apocalyptic game, kind of an alternate reality where nuclear war happens around the like 50s or 60s, I guess, but it's an alternate 50s or 60s. Like the technology is a little bit more advanced and kind of more like the Jetsons era. And then after the war, it leaps ahead 200 or so years into a post apocalyptic future, and then follows this young girl who was essentially raised in a nuclear bunker. If you're a Fallout fan, then you obviously already know about the show, but I would say even if you're not, they did a good enough job with the adaptation that I think it could be entertaining, even if, like, if you're just into that kind of tone, like you like dystopian worlds, or it has a very kind of Western vibe, and you like things to get a little bit wild and crazy sometimes, and you're cool with graphic violence, then like it could be a really good or a fun show for you. You know, I think the lead actress is really nice. I've never seen her in anything else, but her performance was good. Ella Purnell, and Walton Goggins is always fun to watch. So worth checking out. The next two are older shows on Max. Watchmen, the series from 2019, is a follow up for really the source material, you know, the graphic novel, or I guess you could say the film from 2009 as well. It's a continuation, an adaptation, but and there are some linked characters, but you don't have to have seen the film or read the graphic novel to get into it. Obviously, it helps if you have, but a friend recommended me to go another look at it for kind of its storytelling chops. And I have to say, I'd seen it back when it premiered, and I liked it, but going back again to watch it, I think it's aged so well. And I think with, I don't know, the climate of race and politics in the country right now, it's almost more prescient now than it was when they made it. And it was developed by Damien Lindelof, who also created Lost and adapted The Leftovers, which is one of my favorite all time favorite shows. So very well done. It stars Regina King, Yahya Abdul Rahim from well, like Candyman, Matrix, the latest Matrix. I can't even remember the name. Is it Revolutions? Doesn't matter. So this one is set in Tulsa and follows Regina King, who plays a Tulsa police officer, and as they deal with a like kind of a I guess you would say a extremist group that's cropping up in the town. Very deep storytelling on multiple levels, great performances from all the characters, great production design and style. So highly recommend checking that one out on HBO Max. And then this one's going to seem so random. It really is random, but a long time ago I was a Trekkie, fell out of it after Deep Space Nine maybe, and so I really lost touch with it. But then I got this pop up for Star Trek Discovery, and so it's like, okay, I'll check out an episode of it. And I realized that I think it's in its fifth and final season now that just started. Just went back and watched the first couple episodes of it, but I have to say, I was super impressed with it. I think what I was most impressed by is it seems like they kind of took a page out of the J.J. Abrams playbook, and a real Trekkie will tell me, but it seems like they took the alternate timeline stuff from the J.J. Abrams movies to make, or for the narrative piece of this story, and so it's much more action oriented, and even the main character that the series follows is what's they call it Starfleet's first mutineer. I guess as she leads a mutiny in the pilot episode, um, which is a huge change from like the way Star Trek would have been done in the past. And this one is set during wartime, which I don't remember except maybe DS9. But I thought it was really cool, and I'll probably check out some more episodes when I have time. But if you are also a previous Trekkie who kind of like maybe just kind of aged out of the type of storytelling that they were doing before, like this is a new, fresh take on it. And I guess it's not that new since it's going into its fifth season, but new to me. It looks like it started in 2017, so it's been around for a few years. But if you've never checked it out, it's worth a look as well. All right, and that brings us to Love Lies Bleeding, which is still in theaters, but shouldn't be too long before it comes out on streaming. I think it has a date for May 3rd. It stars Kristen Stewart, written and directed by Rose Glass, co-written by Veronica Tovslika. So I had a chance to see it last week, and I just loved it. It's a crime story. I guess it's a few stories, right? It's a love story. It's a crime story. It's got a lot on its mind. So Love Lies Bleeding follows Lou, a gym manager played by Kristen Stewart, who falls for a drifter and bodybuilder played by Katie O'Brien named Jackie, who on her way to Vegas for a weightlifting competition. And I'm not going to get into spoilers, but the two get together, and I think one of the things that I loved about it so much was that it's a fairly simple story, right? These two women who probably aren't great for each other hook up with each other, and then once they start getting involved in each other's lives, kind of just make things worse for each other. But it's so stylistic, especially the sequences in the gym, and with Katie O'Brien doing like bodybuilding stuff. Both of the ladies' performances, Kristen Stewart and her, were just, they're both so charismatic, and at least I was like instantly invested in what happened with both of them. I think it's very cool that we're starting to see more, not just minorities, but or minority led film, but LGBTQ centered films. And this one, has a lesbian character or two lesbian characters in the two lead roles, but it's not really like in your face about it. Like you're just, it's just another story, like it's just a part of their lives, a part of who they are. And I just thought it was very cool the way that it was handled. So, if you get a chance to see it in theaters, then again, I recommend it. But for sure, I will keep you posted on when it's available and streaming. So the show that surprisingly really grabbed me was Under the Bridge, and I had forgotten what a sucker I can be for not necessarily true crime, but a really well done detective story that lets you into the life of the victim. And I think maybe that's what the difference between, because I mentioned Sugar earlier, and this just hit me. Like, Sugar was so focused on the main character, Colin Farrell, but Under the Bridge is more focused on all the parties involved. Like, we get to know the victim, and I guess I should say what it's about first. So, sorry, let me back up. So, Under the Bridge, the new series from that's airing on Hulu, tells the true story, or it's based on true events, of a young girl named Rena Vert, who's 14 years old, went to a party and never came home. And so Under the Bridge tells the story of the, I guess, writer slash journalist who kind of covered the events in her hometown, the police officers investigating it, and young girls who were involved. So very character driven, adapted for television by Quinn Shepard, and stars Lily Gladstone, Riley Keough as the two main characters. The first two episodes dropped on April 17th, and then they're doing one a week after that. If you haven't gotten a chance to, I usually don't do too many spoilers on this show, but there's not really a way to talk about it without spoiling. So, or at least not that I could think of. So I decided this episode I would just go deeper on episode one, and then next episode I'll come back with a deeper look at episode 2 and 3. So if you haven't had a chance to watch them yet, I highly recommend it. All the performances are fantastic. Lily Gladstone, I think, gets so much more to do in this series than she got to do in Killers of the Flower Moon, and she's great. All the young ladies that play these terrifying young girls, these terrifying young teenage girls, are great. The family, Rena's family, is fantastic. Like literally, the casting director should get an award. I don't know. I can't speak. I'm just really invested in the characters, and although sadly we know what happens to Rena, learning more about her character and her family's like struggle through all this. So all right, so that's really the spoiler warning. So episode 1, Looking Glass, was directed by Geeta Vasant Patel, written by Quinn Shepard, the showrunner. It's the setup, right? We get to meet Raina Raina being particularly, and I'm sure that's what inspired like the writing, but very relatable character to me. She feels like an outcast, and on many different levels, right? Like culture, race, um, religion. She has trouble fitting in, and so what do some people that have trouble fitting in do? They end up hanging with the wrong people, and so the people she feels, or the girls that she feels most comfortable or tries to get in comfortable with, are the ones that are in trouble a lot. The Seven Oaks girls. We meet Rebecca, the writer, who hints are dropped that there's some kind of tragedy in her family's past. She hasn't been home in a decade. Relationship with her parents is shaky. I thought I hadn't seen Riley Keough in, well, I've seen some of the films that she's been in, but she hadn't really stood out to me before. But very like subtle performer, at least from what we see so far, right? And I think in a good way, like she just does a lot with her face, like under the surface type of performance, which is cool. And we also meet um, Cam, the sheriff's deputy, I guess, played by Lily Gladstone. Her character also kind of an outcast, right? I mean, she's was clearly a adopted cop who's got a very old world mentality. He's very dated in his thinking, and actually when Cam asks him for a recommendation at work, he actually drops an affirmative action comment, which was unreal to me. So we get to see like it, and looking back on it now, it's kind of a story of outcasts. All the characters were not characters; they were real people, but all of them were kind of outcasts or out of place in their own way, which makes it even more interesting. One of the things that I'm really enjoying about the way that they structured the show is how we're cutting back and forth between prior to Rena's disappearance and then present time, and it's what's keeping us not only connected to the characters, but continuing to build our relationship with like Rena and the family as the story progresses. So right off the bat, when we meet Rena, we learn that through her discussion with her uncle, she's regularly skipping school. She's having trouble fitting in. There's some kind of struggles with bullying, and her uncle is like really trying to be supportive of her, but even though she seems to like and respect him, as soon as he mentions anything serious, she dips, right? She doesn't she she's not she's not trying to talk about anything real with him. So what does she do? I think and this is probably true with most kids, if they have trouble fitting in one clique, usually it's easy to fall in with the wrong crowd, right? And you hate to lump these girls from the Seven Oaks Center that she goes to hang out. You hate to lump them into a bad crowd just because of their circumstances or where they were, but it's not long after we meet them, we go in and her friend Dusty is there, but then we also meet Josephine, right? The ringleader, the boss, and it doesn't take long. 1 minute everybody's cool, they're listening to the new Biggie album, but as soon as Raina steps up onto Josephine's bed, like just probably a bad call, but I mean, who does that? Who just goes and jumps up on somebody else's bed? But the way that Josephine like lashes out at her, like, or says something along like "Get your fat ass off," like just straight to the core of like trying to hurt somebody seriously in front of and not just one on one, right? Like in front of the whole friend group. And then from that point on, um, Josephine like kind of kicks her to the curb, right? Doesn't let her go, doesn't let her follow the group to the weed dealer's house or to the weed man's house. And so right after that, like just another heartbreak, right? Like it's one after another for our girl Raina. And so then um, we meet Rebecca, the writer who's catching a plane home, and her character we learn a lot about really quickly, right? She hasn't been home in a decade. It's clear like the relationship with her parents isn't great. Her dad gets her mixed up with her noticeably absent her noticeably absent sibling, and there's some allusion to some type of tragedy that happened there. And in this episode, we also meet Cam, the sheriff's deputy, who is kind of an outcast in her own right as well, right? She's clearly adopted by these. I mean, obviously, the man was nice enough to adopt her, but still kind of backwards in his ways and his thinking. Um, and her brother's not much better, her adopted brother. But we even get a comment. She's asking her dad for help with a recommendation, and he drops an affirmative action comment on her, like, "No, I'm not going to help you, but you're probably good with affirmative action." Like, what the fuck, dude? Like, that's your daughter. Even if it's your adopted daughter, like, is that what kind of environment is that for her to grow up in, and what does that teach her about her self-respect, right? So just so not the best situation for any of our main characters or people that we're following, right? They've all had some type of trouble in their past. And one of the things that I'm liking so far, and I hope that it continues, is that we're getting to develop this relationship with Raina and her family through flashbacks. And so some of the episode we're cutting back in the past, like we get to see kind of what led up to Raina's troubles, right? Like she just has trouble. Things escalate or escalated with these girls. So Josephine calls out Raina, and Raina fires back. Right? She takes her little black book and then starts. I love how this is. It reminds me. It takes me back to like pre-cell phone, right? When all of our numbers had to be written down on paper in a little book, and nothing was stored in a cell phone. There were no cell phones. But she goes through Josephine's book, calling everybody that she knows, just throwing all types of shade. You got fake this, fake that. You're HIV positive, like looks like a rat, and then even ass out the weed man at the end. So like hilarious, yes, but again, just a young person, young girl, not thinking about like the consequences, right? Her feelings are hurt. She lashes out, um, and not just lashing out, but from what Josephine was teaching her their little crew, like this was kind of the way things were done, right? Like you kind of hit first and then you get respect, right? Or hit back and you get respect. But it's not long before there's fallout from this, right? Um, Raina's having dinner with her family, and again, like we're getting another chance to see like how things just aren't clicking there, right? Her mom's this extreme, or not, I don't even know if it's extreme, but a devout Jehovah's Witness, which makes things difficult for Raina because they don't get to celebrate birthdays. That part out. But then during dinner, she gets a call from Josephine, and should have known something right then, right? Like, you know what you did to this girl, but then she calls and invites you to a party. You should know something's up, but she doesn't. So she goes out there, to this parking lot party, right, with the rest of the kids, and it's not long before she realizes what's up, right? And this is that moment when like I really got the chills. Just a small group of kids, like these ruthless little girls, could be scary, but when they're in a whole mob, when there's like 20, 30 of them out there, and you have, they're all just like gassing each other up and like feeding the fire, you just never know what could happen. Like there's all kinds of tragedies that come from situations like this. So and the way that it was shot was like really, really well done. I think we really got to see Raina's shock as she realizes like what's going on, and then you just feel so bad for her as like she takes off, and she's not gonna make it. She's not the fastest one out there, and you just know like what's coming. So Raina goes off. The kids chase her, and we don't really know, like we don't see much more then. But it's not long after we learn that it's been days since anybody's seen Raina, and another, like, and then things get even more depressing for these girls when we realize like her family goes to the cops, and they don't even take it seriously. Like they even have this expression like where they call them bit girls, like the disposable lighters. Like her mother, Suman, played by Archie Punjabi, which I meant to shout her out earlier. She's just terrific through this entire episode. But she thinks Raina's just run off, right? She thinks she's just run away again, and she's like packing her stuff up. But her dad thinks that it's not that, right? He thinks something's wrong. He can't sleep. Somebody keeps calling their house looking for Raina. And luckily, I think it's Lily's, or Cam's, her brother's attitude, right? When she's talking to the family, and she kind of, it's her brother's attitude that makes her start to take things a little bit more seriously. She gets a name from the uncle, goes and follows up on it, with the weed man Connor, and then it's when she talks to Connor that, and she learns from him that Josephine and the little CMC fake ass Crip Crip gang that they made up is actually out there saying that Raina might be floating somewhere, and that like they might have done something to her. But then again, Cam brings this info. She brings all this back to the police, to her dad, her brother, and they essentially laugh it off, right? Like they don't take any of it seriously. But to her credit, she stands firm and pressures them to drag the lake, looking for and look for any evidence of Raina. And her dad even reminds her that, like, this is your rep on the line, and he doesn't want the cops out there wasting time behind a lead. But I took this another way. It was really sad to me. It seems like you would always want to err on the side of caution, right? And I get taxpayer dollars and all of that, but if you have this suspicion, or there's a chance that this girl might be hurt or dead out there, then you just get the people out there and look. But they do it. They drag the lake, and I thought it was really interesting. I didn't realize how close the school was to, like, where she was suspected of disappearing, because the kids are all watching them drag the lake from school. And we even see Josephine and one of the other girls, I think it's Kelly, kind of huddle up close to each other and link their pinkies, like, and I'm like, what does that mean? Is that, I hope they don't find her, or I hope they do, or like, you just really don't know. But they end up finding something, right? Like they give the thumbs up signal, and turns out that they find some of Raina's clothes, her jeans and underwear, and mom mom's given up at this point, right? She just thinks Raina's dead. And I thought her father was really sweet in this scene. Like, pretty much every scene, I was just like, man, this guy is so sweet. Like, he's holding on, right? He's holding on hope, that she's still alive out there. But the new evidence gives the cops what they need to start rounding up the kids, so they end up rounding up all the CMC. And my girl Dusty even tries to make a run for it. Nice try. Appreciate you. So they have all the girls rounded up, and as much as I can't stand Josephine, your heart still kind of goes out to him, because the girls are all given a chance to call someone, and Josephine, she has no one to call, or she calls her mom, I think, but her mom, like, blows her off because the boyfriend doesn't like her, and like, she has no one to call, so she ends up calling the writer, Rebecca. So Rebecca shows up. So we learn more about her. She has no issue lying to cops or anyone to work around the system and get where she wants to be. She shows up telling the cops that she's Josephine's guardian. It's like, well, you got to talk to Cam. So she walks over, and we see that she recognizes her, right? Again, like, all the stuff from Riley Keough, very subtle, but she's very good. And then she goes right back to the desktop, and she's like, yeah, no, Cam said it's fine, I can go talk to Josephine. So we get to see how Rebecca doesn't really have any problem working the system to get what she wants, which may come into play later. And so I really dug the way that they chose to end this episode. So the last time that we saw Raina, she's getting chased under this bridge by this mob of, like, mad teenagers. Everything's pointing to the fact that she's dead, right? But right before the end of the episode, some new evidence crops up. We've got a CCTV tape. Cam and the other cops are playing it back, and then we get a replay of the events. Some of what we've seen before: Raina running under the bridge, the big mob of kids following her. But then we get some new info, right? The kids come out from the bridge, and then a few minutes later, we see Raina kind of stagger out from under the bridge. She's limping. She's clearly had the shit beat out of her, but she's alive, right? We flip back to the jail. Rebecca is making her way into the holding cell. We've got some ominous, like low Nirvana playing. And then she approaches Josephine's cell. Josephine comes over and asks her if she can keep a secret. And I thought a great way to end the episode. Definitely hooked me. And I don't really have any theories at this point. So let me know what'd you think of any of the stuff we talked about today. Have you seen Love Lies Bleeding? Are you into Under the Bridge? Are you further ahead? Do you have theories? Let me know in the comments or at the email. I'll definitely be back next week talking more about episode, probably do 2 and 3 next week together, and then still working on regrading the MCU multiverse saga. And if you guys have any suggestions for me, let me know. Oh, and the Veil that I mentioned earlier. So probably next week we'll touch on the Veil if it's aired. Yeah, it airs in a couple of days, so we'll touch on the Veil. We'll come back with Under the Bridge episodes 2 and 3. So thanks again. If you made it this far, thanks for hanging out with me, talking a little TV today. Um, Always a good time, and I will catch up with you guys next week.